Now, say my name.
The Rolling Bad Podcast.
You're goddamn right.
Welcome to the Rolling Bad Podcast, episode number 20, coming to you from the desolate wastelands of Albuquerque, New Mexico. We're recording on the 5th of March, and I am your host, Elric Edge. With me tonight are
Bill Costello
and James Tapia.
Tonight we're going to cover our usual topics. We're going to discuss what's come out in the last couple of weeks, discuss some games that we've played and the hobby that we've been up to, and then in the realm of lore, we're going to do a two-part series. The first half will be a discussion we had with Tyler Emerson from the Scruby and Wells podcast. You can hear the first part on our show, and then the second half of the conversation will be on his show, so definitely check that out. We're going to be discussing all kinds of different things, but primarily the role that Games Workshop can be taking with the community to expand and create a universal tournament pack type of thing. And so
take control of the tournament scene.
Yeah. So it was really good conversation. So definitely check that out.
For sure.
Let's do a show.
All right. The realm of the new dawn. Well, we're going to talk about the new stuff that's come out this month. And really, there's not a whole lot new that we haven't talked about, because we already talked about the release of the Primarch and Cypher and
the whole Vanguard chamber for Stormcast, the Stormcast book.
Shadows over Hammerhall, the new...
Yeah, Silver Tower. Wow, has there really been anything in the last 2 weeks?
Not really. I mean, there's releases, like the Raptors are releasing and the Aqualor released, but not anything really new announced. And the new White Dwarf came out, and there's really not a lot of... There is a Horus Heresy squad that's coming out, plus some Mark III armor. There's a lot of stuff. There's stuff for 40K.
The Fallen.
Yeah, the Fallen.
That's pretty cool.
the Mark III warriors. So those are pretty cool. There's a Blood Bowl. The Reichland Reaver team is coming out. The Ogre is coming out. But I think we covered most of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure we have. I mean...
So, yeah, there's really... It seems strange that in the month that they're dropping a Primarch. Hello?
Yeah.
And shaking up the world, there's not really much else in the White Dwarf.
What about, I know we have a different lore, but about that picture that dropped on the Warhammer community site this week.
Oh, the big robot-looking thing fighting against the Bloodthirster?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I just want it. I want it already. It's like, this has got to be the longest tease on the rumor mill or rumor engine that they've done.
Yeah.
Whatever this is all building up to. And I really hope it's Dwarden and not like with the spot that 40K is in right now. It could be some weird new thing for 40K. It could be an Adeptus Mechanicus build up. Who knows?
Squats are coming back to save
I don't think the artwork matched up with 40K artwork.
No,
it's really, definitely AOS artwork.
Yeah.
It looks that way.
Yeah. I just waiting and waiting.
And
waiting.
And waiting.
Oh, man. It's
good thing it's tax returns.
Well, I have a nice fat chunk of change set up with Frontline.
Okay.
Nice.
So whenever it drops, I'm going
all over it.
Crazy about it. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, it has to frickin' come out already in order for me to buy it. So hopefully it's Dwarden. Now, that being said, with some of the other kind of like rumored things that we're going to get, like a summer of elves and Slaanesh or whatever, summer campaign type thing, as cool as that is, right, the Dwarden release really excites me. It'll be really cool to see which direction they go with the elves. It'll be really cool to see if they do change what Slaanesh is about or, anything like that. It does kind of suck for Destruction and Death players, especially Death players who have gotten Flesh Eater courts, and that's it.
Yeah.
In fact, Death has had more taken away from it
than they've gained.
Yep. So it's kind of a shame that from what it looks like right now, obviously something could come out between now and like August. But what it looks like, man, is that Death is not going to get any kind of love for a significant chunk of time. And same thing with Destruction, And I think that really sucks because Destruction's in a place now where it's like if you don't play the mixed BCR list, I don't know if there's a whole lot else out there for you, other than maybe Cun and Ruck, but then your opponent will probably want to punch you in the face. And then for Death, especially with the point adjustment for the Tomb King stuff, man, it's going to be interesting. I think Death still can do it. I think they still have stuff in that army to compete and the death save. And it'll be interesting to see what General's Handbook 2 does for them as well. But, man, if you're a hardcore Death player and that's really all you got, then sorry, that sucks.
They're still fun to play.
Sure. But it's always fun to get new stuff, too.
Yeah, that's the whole thing is.
Have they even gotten anything for Age of Sigmar?
Flesh Eater. Well,
yeah, but that was a book, but
nothing
no models.
New.
Nope.
No, all he did was repackage the horrors with wings to make players. And that's about it.
They did get a decent amount of love in the end times with the Mortarks, the Morghast, Nagash, the new Spirit Host models and stuff. But it does kind of, man, I don't know. Hopefully they get some kind of crazy new thing, and it's not dumbass Nagash rising again.
Yeah. Or
I'm going to overthrow again. Whee!
They could do splash releases here and there. You never know what they're up to. It doesn't have to be a big,
Because did we see was Ironjawz even rumored before it came out, or was that kind of just like a here you go,
snap down Ironjawz.
Fire Slayers were the same way.
It was So I mean, we don't know the roadmap necessarily. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff that could be missing on that roadmap that we don't know is coming out.
Sure.
I still like to. I think they like to have a little something up their sleeve that nobody sees coming.
Well, I mean, we had no idea Primarch was coming until the day it leaked. That was, and that's definitely something that you would think would be all over the rumor sites. But I think we're seeing now that those rumor sites are pretty useless.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It could be, they are building up to a big Dwarden release, and then right after we could get a Bone Shatter. What are they called? The
Bone
Rattle book, or we could get a Soul Blight thing or something in a totally different direction. Who knows?
Yeah, you never know. I have faith, so because only the faithful.
Sure. But I think that's pretty much it for New Dawn. I mean,
well, I wanted to touch on this new White Dwarf that came out. I keep saying that each one is better than the last, and I'm not going to say this one's better than some of the other ones, simply because this one is just a lot about Guilliman and a lot about Ultramar, and by no means none of that is bad. There's actually a pretty cool layout in here about how the Stormcast work and what they do for a living, so that's kind of cool. Nice. But the thing that really kicked me on this one, two things. They have the Tale of Four Gamers starting up again, except this time it's 40K. So they're going to give the 40K crowd some love on that one. But the whole back of this issue, between the sprues and glue and the paint splatter, they are just knocking it completely out of the park. It's like 10, 12 pages of converting. And then in the paint splatter, it's all about how to paint different textures and materials like cloth, metal, this, that, and the other thing. And they do their typical really good coverage on how to do these things, how to work this stuff. Really great, wonderful presentation. I'm digging it, going through it word by word. It's really, really nice. And they have the Golden Demon stuff in there too. So if you want to drool over people that just go nuts, wow. But this is definitely a good White Dwarf. And if you're into the Guilliman thing or the Shadows over Hammerhall, they actually have. Keep wanting to say Rambo.
Slambo.
Slambo.
That's right, rules for Slambo.
They have rules and a card for Slambo in there with the whole thing of, take this to the store, photocopy it, and here's your card. So,
Cool.
Yeah, it's a really good issue. Really good issue. But that's about it.
Well, hopefully in our next episode we got some big news bit to talk about, I'm hoping.
I'm thinking when this next book drops, and I know it's 40K, and we're not a 40K podcast, but I'm pretty sure when this next book drops, there's going to be stuff to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, Age of Sigmar, I'm hoping we have some kind of juicy bit for AOS.
I think there will be too. It seems kind of strange that they're dual pipelining this stuff, because it looks like there's a build-up on both sides. So, fun.
Yeah.
We done with New Dawn?
Yep. The Realm of Creation, where we're going to talk about what we've been up to in the hobby the last 2 weeks. Bill, I see you got some stuff.
Yeah, 60 crypt ghouls are ready for priming. I actually built them all last night and this morning, so it wasn't exactly 2 weeks worth, but yeah, I got them all built up. Gonna try the Ghoul Patrol. So
nice. Looks like you also got some ruined European buildings over there.
Yeah, there's a little bolt action stuff over there, but hashtag we're not a bolt action podcast.
Nice.
Have you figured out how you're gonna paint them?
The ghouls?
Yep.
Same way my other ones were.
Oh, okay.
Gonna give them the kind of bonish, sort of pale white, and then hit them with the gray and highlight the bloody areas.
Sweet.
So, yeah, hopefully they'll be fun. Elric?
So I actually have a little bit for the Realm of Creation.
Understatement.
So I actually tried building a model the other day. I sat down for the first time since before the LVO when I was cranking out brutes left and right. And I was like, I got a little bit of time to myself. I want to build some models. So I busted out some Gorgruntas and remembered that I used all my glue for the Iron Jaw, for the brutes, and found that I had an old bottle of stuff. It didn't have a label on it of any kind. So I was like, well, it's in a glue-shaped bottle, so let's try this. Turned out to be thin or super thin super glue.
Oh.
Yeah, so I started having like flashbacks to way back when I first started building models, and about how half the model's just covered in this sheen of super glue, and it got away from me, and then it wouldn't hold because I'm guessing because the glue was so old that it would just not set, and I was hitting it with zip kicker and everything, and it would not hold. So I had like 90% of this Gorgrunta assembled, and then it would just kind of crumple in my hands. And after about the third time, I flipped out and had to put it down and was like, well, I have to wait till the next time when I go to the game store to get some super glue. So that was my building. For my painting, I did not paint models, but I did do some painting. Last night, I went with my wife and the in-laws to they call it a paint by wine or something like that. But anyways, a whole bunch of white chicks and a couple of guys sat down in a room and listened to upbeat poppy music while consuming a bunch of wine and painting. So sounds maybe a little corny, but it was actually a lot of fun. And I got to kind of experiment with some painting techniques that normally I wouldn't do on a model, like wet blending and things like that. Because we used acrylic paints, but it's not quite the same quality as GW and stuff like that, so it behaved differently. But it was interesting, you know, the lady who was up there doing the class was talking about like dry brushing and over brushing and blending and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, I know all this stuff. So the paint didn't, you know, the picture didn't quite come out the way I wanted it to, but it was my first time ever painting on a canvas. So that's a totally different medium as well. You know, we were all talking about doing it again or taking the kids and stuff like that. So I think next time I would probably get a much better result out of the whole thing. And it was also cool because I used the biggest brush they had to do a lot, probably 95% of the painting. And that's something that when painting a model, I don't do. I have a tendency to always reach for the smallest brush. And because I don't want to make messy lines. Yeah. And what that tends to do is you get burned out because it takes you forever to paint one guy.
Yeah, you got to use the right brush for the right area that you're covering.
And I've always been too afraid to use bigger brushes because I'm afraid it'll make too much of a mess and I don't want to go back and clean up, which you're going to have to do anyways. Yeah. So, yeah, definitely. It's definitely cool experimenting with that. And then I bought a Stormcast army. So
wait. Go back. Hold on.
James?
No, wait. Go back.
Yeah, so you can stick a fork in the iron jaws. They're done. And yeah, I got a pretty good deal on a good chunk of Stormcast. It's still not everything that I need by a long shot, but it's definitely something to grow on. And the idea is, I have the Iron Jaws, and I really love my Iron Jaws. They're a great army. They look cool on the table and everything. And I think for like teaching games or narrative games or anything like just fun, laid-back games, they're a great army to break out and have fun with. But, we've got some events coming up that, like I might be going to the Broadside Bash in San Diego. We're talking about making our way to the Slobber Knocker at the very beginning of August. Things like that. I don't want to take my Iron Jaws to another competitive event. I just don't think they can do it, especially with the new books coming out. So I picked the Stormcast because they're the Space Marines of Age of Sigmar. And I'm not talking about their looks or the fluff or anything like that. I'm talking about their playability. Yeah. They compete in every phase of the game well. They don't excel necessarily at anything, but they are always a presence in that. And because they are kind of the poster child of Age of Sigmar, like Space Marines, they'll always be getting new stuff.
Yeah, they'll get some love.
And that's important when you have an army that you want to continue to play and be competitive with. It's nice to know that your army is going to, at the very least, get a nod every now and then, as opposed to languishing for months or years or possibly even a decade, as some of my armies have in the past. So that's, another big reason why I went with them. And they look awesome. I know I talked about like Stormcast fatigue when this new Vanguard thing came out, but they're a sweet looking army. Yeah, they look like Age of Sigmar to a T. They're hyper fantasy, badass paladin dudes that go around with great big sticks and hit things till they don't get back up from it. So, that's why I went with them. Now the trick is to sit down and learn how to play them. So, but fortunately we have a group here that's, with James and Andrew and some of the others, we have a group that's pretty knowledgeable about Stormcast. So,
did you decide what chamber you're going to paint them?
I don't know. Actually, none of the established chambers are all that appealing. There was the hammers or there's like a black and gold or something like that that was kind of appealing. But other than that, I don't know. All the established ones just don't. And I don't care about any of their fluff. They're all boring idiots that are like charging into the meat grinder because Sigmar told them to. To me, the fluff for Stormcast right now is pre-Horus Heresy Space Marines. So before the Horus Heresy launched, Space Marines were pretty boring to read about. They were always like charging into the fight, bolters ablazing, and they had no personality. And then the Horus Heresy came out, and it really started to establish characters with personality and that were really memorable. I mean, you had like Loken and Salt Harvitz and Garrow and, and that's just the regular guys, not the Primarchs. So I'm hoping that as Age of Sigmar evolves and the fluff continues to move forward, that they start making some of these guys a little more interesting and some of the chambers maybe a little more interesting and diverse, because right now they're not.
Nope. We got Liberator Steve over there.
Yeah. Yeah, really.
Liberator Bob.
Yeah. So I'll probably paint him in a scheme that's appealing to me. I have an idea in my head of maybe like a vibrant emerald green that shines. I just don't know how I would achieve that effect yet. So, but yeah, I don't know. We'll go forward.
Take a paint scheme. What the hell? Why not? Right?
Yeah. That's me. That's everything I've been up to.
So are we done?
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
It is the realm of James, after all.
Right, I forgot.
So, what have I been up to? I think last time I mentioned that I was going to get an airbrush and start my Tzeentch army, and I did. Base coated the entire army in like a day. I can see why commission painters
use airbrushes.
Use airbrushes for everything.
Yeah.
Makes base coating super, super simple. And we get some really good results. So I think I base coated 40 blue horrors, 9 exalted flamers. I started the Lord of Change, and I gotten my first layer of highlights and washes on him so far. So I decided to start with him since I think he was the most intimidating model in the army.
He's gorgeous, even as he stands right now, like you said, with just the first layer of highlights and what have you. He's absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you. I'll probably put some pictures on our Instagram.
Yeah, you need to throw them up on Instagram.
Some work in progress Wednesdays over here, but he's coming along with this new paint scheme. I'm probably gonna have to paint some new pink horrors to match. Unfortunately, because I don't. The scheme is a little bit different than my previous demon army. So plus I have to rebase 132s anyway.
Oh yeah.
So I might as well just buy some new ones and start from there.
So can you paint pink horrors some other color? Or do they have to be pink?
Well, they can be another color, but then you just don't get any of their special rules because they're not pink.
I didn't want to paint pink. It offends my manliness.
I don't think you necessarily have to paint them pink, but your blue horrors and your pink horrors and your brimstone horrors all better be different colors.
They're all going to be the same.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
See, I was looking for a concept army of, different grays for each one. Just to make you mad.
I don't care if they're, baby puke green and stare directly at the sun white and dog dick red, as long as they are all different colors. And I know what they are,
But these ones are going to be green and blue, and the other ones are going to be blue and green.
You stop it right now.
God. I'm going to paint my brimstones pink. My pink horrors are going to be blue, and my blue horrors are going to be yellow.
Whatever.
So that's what I've got. Just looking forward to painting more Zinch.
Yeah.
With the airbrush now, I got it to where I feel comfortable playing it on the table.
Cool.
So that's a good big plus where it looks okay from 3 feet away.
Are you going to try and get to the point where you can do highlights and things like that with the airbrush, or are you just going to use it to base coat?
No, just a base coat.
Oh.
I prefer a brush. So
yeah, priming and base coating with an airbrush it's so much easier, and
that's what takes the longest too, because you're covering the most area,
as opposed to
especially when it's something like a blue horror, which like 90% of the model is going to be blue. You might as well, like a Stormcast or something like that.
Yep, exactly. So hopefully those are coming along. I'm trying to avoid buying 12 Skyfires right now, but we can talk about that in battle.
Yeah. So is that it?
I think that's it.
Well, let's go to battle then.
The Realm of Battle.
Where we're going to talk about our games over the last couple of weeks. I, however, don't have one or two or any.
I was playing you when we didn't play.
Yeah. So Bill, you want to talk about our non-game?
Yeah, well, I can't believe I drew that game.
It was
chance.
interesting. I hadn't tried that army before.
Me either.
It was interesting that I'm glad that I did try it to see how they perform on our non-table.
I know I'm not going to buy them.
Right. Yeah.
So.
I mean, if I had to pin it down to anything that caused us to draw, I would say that it was the non-rolls of the non-dice. So.
Yeah, I was not rolling not well.
Yeah.
So. So anyway, what we're getting at here is James, carry the flag.
The only one giving legitimacy to this podcast here.
Thank you.
I know.
Thank you.
God.
Last 2 weeks I played some games, both with new people in our group.
You got to build up your ego after the LVO. Thump some baby seals.
Yep.
If anybody needs to build up their ego after the LVO, it's me.
And me.
Yeah, 60, 61, 62, something like
Whatever.
56.
Who's counting? God.
Okay, so played Robert, who we've been talking about with the Fire Slayers.
Yep.
He wanted to give it a go. An interesting army with the new point reductions. I think they're actually an army.
Yeah, for sure. I'm
And-
definitely looking forward to
Yep.
throwing down with him.
And I think they have the potential to be really good. With as much stuff as I saw on that board, I was like, whoa. And especially with I get a 4-up save with a reroll plus a 4-up, Fire Slayer slave. It's hard to kill.
Yeah. They don't tend to hit back, though. It's
No.
hard, yeah.
It depends. I mean, I was playing my Zinch list. Just throwing something out there. I took the Warp Flame host and then the Conflagration host with the big formation. So it was 3 units of pink horrors, 6 exalted flamers, Lord of Change, 2 heroes on a disc, and then I want to say 40 blue horrors.
Wow.
Jeez.
And 10 brimstone. So I'm just throwing stuff out there. I'm just trying this is the phase we usually do is when I pick up a new army, just try a whole bunch of stuff and see what works, what doesn't.
Right.
Did that with the Sylvaneth. I'm going to try. Like I said earlier, I'm trying to avoid buying 12 Skyfires.
Yeah.
Because I have a list that I'm pretty sure will get the work done.
Yeah.
With 12 Skyfires, 2 Shamans, Lord of Change, 30 Zangor, and 2 units of pink horrors.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
Pretty good.
I think it's pretty good. Has
Yeah.
the tools to deal with a lot of the stuff. I'm gonna try to make the demons work right now.
The pure demons?
It's pure demons right now. I think the way because I think right now with the list the way I have too much. Big problem. I know. I have too many spells.
No.
Yeah.
I have more spells to cast than I actually have slots.
You have slots to cast with.
to cast with.
Yeah.
That's why I was finding that army's like, well, I don't have anything to cast because
That's a problem that's all throughout Zinch, because I was looking at my list and I had more spells than I had guys that could cast them.
yeah. So I think I'm gonna drop one of the guys on the Heralds of Zinch on disc and throw in either a Gaunt Summoner or Shaman.
Yeah,
That way I get
Thaumaturge.
Yeah, well, that way I get some access to the Arcanite lore.
Oh,
Break it
nice.
up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think there's some good synergies between them and the demons.
Did you play your Zinch in the second game?
No,
Talk about-
second game I've tried the new Stormcasts.
Okay, well, so before you go to that, let me ask you, how many games have you played with your Zinch?
Just one.
Oh, okay. So
I don't have too much.
bit of a premature question then. I
What
was
were
going
you
to ask, do you see a spot for mortals?
From what perspective? From power gaming perspective?
Yeah. Do you feel that mortals possess the ability to be competitive, either as a pure mortal or slotting in any of the aspects
You
of
might
the mortal?
slot them in you might slot in 30 Marauders to take up really cheap battle line if you're min-maxing on Skyfires.
Yeah.
I think that was one list I had too.
Oh, jeez.
Because I think because the problem with the Zinch right now I'm seeing is a lot of the battle line. I think the cheapest is the Pink Horrors at
What?
140,
Oh.
160 for 10 guys.
Well, they are spellcasters.
Yeah, they're. I mean,
They're good, yeah.
they're pointed appropriately, but it's just like you're not. I'm used to the 100 points for
Yeah.
10.
What are
10
the acolytes?
I want to say they're 140, 160 as well.
Are they? Yeah, they're right up around the same, but they have the shooting also.
Yeah,
So
I
they're
mean they're up there. So your battle line in the Zinch army is a little bit expensive
It is.
if you're trying to min max here.
Yeah.
Okay.
In which case, that's when you take the Marauders that are
80, I think.
80 points
yeah.
apiece,
Yeah.
and you spend 240 in your battle line. That's just going to sit there at the back of the table.
Can
too.
Marauders take a mark?
Yep.
Yeah, they can.
They can.
Well,
So
the thing about it is, though, the way I was looking at my Arcanite list, those Angers are hard to beat in big numbers.
that's why that list of mine has 30 of them.
Yeah,
it's
Yeah,
like
they're
with 2 wounds
crushing.
apiece, they're crushing some stuff. Yeah. That way you have the fighting and the shooting and the mortal wounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that list has everything. Like I said, I'm just throwing stuff out there, trying different stuff. I have the Oracles list I want to try too. I'm going to try the Lord of Change with the big sword, trying to make him work. We'll see. I don't think he will, but try it, see how it goes. Was disappointed. I landed up tabling Robert by turn 5, so but it just didn't mesh. I think that was just my poor playing. I kind of just stood there at the back. He
Just shot him
He
as a
ran
team
forward.
too. Yeah.
I shot him. Or I moved back, shot him. He ran forward. I moved back, shot him.
Well, you also played Gifts of the Heavens, and both of the objectives fell right in the middle.
Yeah,
So it was
exactly.
basically playing take and hold.
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
Exactly.
Whereas if it had been like Border War or whatever, you would have
where you had
been
to go
forced
out.
to maybe.
I would have been. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that maybe just been the scenario combined with the gun line
Yeah.
that I have that just I didn't think it felt for a very interesting game and didn't interest me in the list too much, but more practice, more stuff.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
Second game was just a couple days ago against Cody. Returning, I think we've talked about him, new player too. He's playing Flesh Eater Courts. I think he played your Iron Jaws. He played Jules' Death List. He wanted to try to see what Stormcasts were about. So I brought the Stormcast.
He was sadly disappointed, no doubt.
Especially with my Stormcast build.
Yeah.
it's a really hard counter to his list because I play with 4 Fulminators and 2 Tempestors with Lord on Dracoth, Adjudicators, and a whole bunch of Prosecutors with Javelins.
Yeah.
And so, especially with the items I took and everything else, my Dracoths were sitting on a 2-up or a 1-up save, rerolling 1s against a Flesh Eater Court that has no
rend. Very limited mortal wound output.
Yeah, and it was just kind of like he's like, I don't know what to do against this.
Yeah.
So I mean, and plus it was our our game, I think we only got to turn 3 and then he threw in the towel, but it took us like 3 hours to play those 3 turns because we were just going through it and working out pros and cons. I'm just trying to give him all the knowledge I have of my experience of what I've learned so far.
We're still teaching in the game too, and I think it may behoove us to sit down with them and really immerse ourselves in the Flesh Eater courts, see if there what's there, and if maybe it would benefit him to incorporate some other death things, because he doesn't lose anything by incorporating.
No, exactly, because you're taking ghouls anyway, and they're already battle line. So yeah, we kind of went over that after the game. We spent a good time talking about that, of what he should take.
Did he have all the courtiers and everything in order to bring the units back?
Yeah, he did. I mean, he was playing with small 10-man units though, which really wasn't optimal. I think he was overloaded on characters. He had He had the zombie dragon, the Terrorgeist, Ghoul Kings. He had 2 Vargulfs and a courtier 2 on top of that. And I think he was just a little overloaded on characters that weren't necessarily doing too much. So we worked it out, and I think he's going to put a lot more ghouls in and possibly throw in when you're a death player, the Morgul. Typical thing. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it gives that army. We were talking about it, and I think he said he's going to try to convert something up or do something, because he really likes that Flesh Eater aesthetic.
Yeah.
Well, if you lose the zombie dragon, the Ghoul King on zombie dragon, keep the terror guys.
Yeah, exactly.
It's much better. You get a lot more points out of it. Well, hell, you can swap that for a Morgul.
Yep,
flat out,
straight out
400 each.
And I think he was a little worried about how death seems to play at the moment, with especially when you're doing the defensive death list with the save. They play in a bubble. And you got to keep everything within that bubble. And I think he wanted something else to go out there and
jump out
that could go on its own and didn't have to worry about.
And the Morgul does that.
And that's what the Morgul does. It gives him the rend that he needs, the damage output, and it gives him the ability to play outside that bubble.
Well, and the Morgul's real good up against your Dracoths too. I mean, he takes away a lot of your mortal wound output with the -1. So
yeah.
Well, their mortal wound output is the breath attack.
Yeah.
He's resilient enough.
Yeah, he's still looking at the death save plus his own save.
Yeah.
So he's not going to just go, oh, look, Dracoths, I die.
I think it's kind of interesting because death players have kind of gotten a lot of crap for the Morgul since pretty much the General's Handbook came out, if not before that. And as we progress forward, and, we were talking about it in the New Dawn, that death may not get anything for quite a while. I think you're just going to see more and more Morguls, because
it's the only
what they have.
That's what they have, yeah. And
you saw snakes because that's what they...
Right, and with the Tomb King stuff kind of being priced out of that top-tier competitive slot, potentially, we may see something yet, but that just means you're going to see more Morguls, and unfortunately, you'll probably see some real cookie-cutter death lists, just because of the limited choice that death players have, and to maybe a little bit lesser extent, destruction will probably also be in that boat. If they don't get some new stuff, you'll probably just see a lot of that mixed destruction.
Yeah, BCR
stuff. I don't know. That's kind of unfortunate, especially for death players.
Yep.
So, like I said, hopefully we can sit down with the Flesh Eater court book and maybe see if somebody's missed something over this last year. I doubt it. There's been a lot of... Flesh Eater course was a pretty popular army for a while there, and I think they just don't possess the tools needed to crack a 2+ rerollable army. Yeah. And that's becoming more and more normal. I mean, Sylvaneth have always had the 2+ rerollable, and Dracoths have always been a thing with the Stormcast, but they're just becoming more and more popular. So, which means
Flesh Eaters, I think their thing is they just dish out wounds like there's no tomorrow, but it's like you said, it's not mortal wounds.
Yeah,
and
there's not even wounds with rends.
Yeah, there's hardly any rend in the whole thing. But they come back a lot. Problem is there's things out there that can wipe out a unit in a turn.
Well, I don't even necessarily know if it's that. It's the fact that the stuff that brings it back are those characters. And as we move to a meta that seems to be like a table-wide shooting, you
can pick those guys out.
Yeah.
They're 8 wounds with a 5-up save.
Yeah.
They don't stick around that long.
Well, not even all of them are 8 wounds, I don't think.
Well, I'm thinking about the Vargolf.
Yeah.
He's the one. He's the one you're taking because he brings back both units. So I mean, that's the one you're taking.
Yeah. So he's got what, a 5-up, 5-up,
5-up, 6-up. Well, 5-up, 5-up if he's if he's playing in that bubble
range.
of the general. Now he's a 5-up, 6-up
against the kind of shooting we're going to start seeing in these armies. So
not against a bunch, 12 Skyfires. Just going to go right.
Yeah. Or 12 Kurnoth Hunters around a Huracanum. Stuff like that is just, I don't know. It's kind of unfortunate because I think it kind of invalidates some of the other armies out there. Right. For Fire Slayers now potentially becoming a thing because of their point reduction, it'd be a shame to see them just almost immediately become a non-army because a lot of their synergy is revolved around their characters, and their characters can... Well,
they got the boost with the core. The core doesn't need the characters. The core is number of bodies, which they got.
Yeah.
So that's one...
Still got to get there, though. Moving it...
Tunnel pop up at 9, and you're going to get in turn 2, or even if you don't get that turn 1 charge off or whatever, you should get in there the second turn, hopefully.
Sure.
Unless Skyfires move 16 away. And
But they can only go so far. And if you got 60 dudes on 32 mil bases, you can cover a lot of table.
You can.
Yes, you can.
So,
it takes a lot to shoot them off.
Sure. So. It'll be interesting to see where it all goes in the upcoming months.
Yep, and with all these new players, I'm excited to get a lot more variety in our
our
meta. I know. I mean, we have a pretty tough, I think, meta as it is with pushing that limit, but it's going to be good to find some other stuff in there. Yeah,
we're going to finally get Fire Slayers on the regular and a different outlook on death, and we got a Chaos player that's going to be coming in.
Yep, and we even had a Seraphon player show up last week too.
Yeah. I would imagine you lost because they're unplayable. But.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you warn him?
I was going to warn him.
Yeah.
Didn't want to start off on the wrong foot, though. Yeah. And be like, that army you're going to play.
Of course, now he's going to look at us and be like, why'd you guys let me play an unplayable army for so long? Why didn't anybody tell me?
I hate you all.
Oh, yeah. I think that's it for a Realm of Battle.
I think so.
The Realm of Lore, where we're going to have a pretty lengthy discussion with Tyler Emerson about a universal tournament pack type thing that could potentially help boost the community if it was put forth by Games Workshop, and all kinds of other wonderful questions. This is going to be the first half of a pretty lengthy discussion we had. The second half and will be on the Scruby and Wells podcast.
And significantly longer.
Yeah, so get your first bit here and then definitely check out his show and the second half of it.
That's right. And don't forget, we still have our contest going on last 2 weeks. Leave us a review on iTunes, and at the end of the next show, we'll make a random draw to see who wins a brand new Stormcast Eternal Battle Tome.
Yep, and thank you for the ones that have already left them.
Yeah.
We got some awesome reviews.
Thank everyone for those. They're really nice. They struck our ego really well. So without further ado, we're going to cut over to the interview with Tyler Emerson. So for our Realm of Lore this week, we actually have our old friend Tyler Emerson from the Scruby and Wells podcast, and we're going to do kind of a 2-part, 2-segment recording. One of the parts you'll hear on our show, the other part you'll hear on his show. So for right now, I'd like to introduce everybody to Tyler Emerson from Scruby and Wells.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on again. We're going to talk a little bit about a big topic, which is organized play systems. So, as most folks know, Magic the Gathering or War Machine, Warhammer Hordes, or X-Wing, the miniatures game, they all have official organized play systems. And we have, for example, in the US, especially on the West Coast, an unofficial one in the ITC that's been really popular. And, there's certainly a long history of these unofficial systems that the community has created in Warhammer for some time. Mm-hmm. We've never seen, at least that I know, Games Workshop leading an organized play system themselves, and in particular working with the community to shape it. So yeah, I'm going to be doing a series of conversations on this topic, and that'll be great to kick it off with getting your guys' thoughts on this big subject. But even before getting into the nitty-gritty of that topic, I wanted to start off with a very broad, big-picture question, as always. And kind of a strong bias I have, of course.
Yeah.
So, starting from first principles, not going back to the beginning of Age of Sigmar, but more where we are right now and what we could be doing going forward. We, as in the company and the community, starting from first principles. If you were setting out to try to greatly increase the attraction, the player base of Age of Sigmar, I'm curious to hear what you guys would do. What would be at the start of your agenda. So yeah, let's start with there.
It's kind of hard to see what company-wise they could do. I mean, they're trying to pave the way into the game and make it as easy as possible. I mean, with the different getting started boxes, with the rules being downloadable, the scrolls being downloadable. They're doing a lot to make the game approachable. I think only as a community could we improve that, and that would be, I mean, you name it, anything from open days to demo games to, there's so many things a community can do to increase the player base, but I don't know that the company can do anything, but that's just my opinion.
Well, I think with like you said, with the introduction of the getting started, and I think one of the big things is in the General's Handbook, they have the different styles of play with the open, the narrative, and the match play. I know everybody tends to migrate towards the match play, but the other play styles in there are also great ways for new players to come in, especially open play. Just put your stuff down and go through the motions and get yourself familiar with it and see where you want to go from there. And then, narrative is also like that too, but you can tell a bigger story with whatever it is that you want to do. And, and then with the getting started boxes, it's so much easier to expand your army. And there's very few armies out there at this point that require you to a significant financial investment into the game to even be able to play. I mean, obviously you can spend your heart's content, and we all generally do, but in order to just get the dice rolling and the models on the table, that barrier of entry is much more comfortable now than it ever has been. So for the company, other than maybe expanding their advertising, finding other places to get the name out, I know that lending out their IP to video game companies is probably the best thing they could have ever done. Yeah. The Dawn of War series is something that brought so many people into 40K, and now you have the Warhammer Total War game is also, I think, the most popular game Creative Assembly has done.
I think it is, yeah.
I'm not sure, but it's certainly up there. So by doing those things, it just makes it so much easier. It'd be interesting. Maybe they could start putting stuff like Silver Tower and Blood Bowl into like Toys R Us or, things like that. But I guess from Games Workshop's perspective, branching out to new people, I think expanding their advertising might be a better way, or it would be a different way to draw in more people. So
I know for me, I know there's been a lot of talk on there about getting a big, huge tournament thing going for a nationwide thing here in the U.S. I think there's still work they can do on the local level in conjunction with friendly local game stores and stuff like that. I mean, doing some kind of, organized league play on during the week or weekends or stuff, getting started in those small communities and building up from there. I mean, giving incentives, either maybe like merchandise or maybe coming up with some kind of rewards program for playing in those leagues every week. And getting, points. Or something, you get so much of a discount off Games Workshop product or something like that could be a good incentive to bring people in playing, weekly or bi-weekly or whatever. And that could be a good step towards growing your community because, we got Twitch TV right now where you can say, hey, go watch Twitch TV. You kind of got to be a subscriber to do that, though. No. But I think one of the biggest strengths of the game is just playing it there in the game store and having people see it. I mean, I know especially when you have two nice painted armies with some nice terrain and stuff, people come over and they look at it.
For sure.
And they ask questions and stuff like that.
But you know what? I kind of want to take one thing that you said, like getting it into toy stores. Really, what I think they should be doing is getting the game into Barnes and Noble. Walden Books.
They used to with the original Lord of the Rings launch. It
but
was all over the place. Like
that was part and parcel of the whole overarching
contract
deal with New Line Cinemas. They need to put their products in places like that. I don't think you're going to get a big crowd at Toys R Us. You're going to get more of a crowd, I think, at a bookstore or, even Amazon.com. Because that's the kind of, as much as you say you want to aim it towards kids, those aren't the ones with the disposable income needed to play these games. You need to hit those people that are going to the bookstores.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of continuing on this thread, and a little bit in relation to what Jane was saying especially. So we have these 3 different ways of playing: open, narrative, and matched. As Elric said, we tend toward kind of the matched, or there's a lot of attraction and emphasis around that. But thankfully a growing movement of these NEOs, these NEOs, narrative event organizers, to push the narrative side that I know you guys are a part of. Now, we could imagine a kind of competitively oriented scene that I would say is at least an order of magnitude beyond where it stands now, even in the UK. So you look at something like Magic the Gathering, or on an even larger scale, esports gaming, where TBS last year, I don't know if they're still doing it, they had this kind of more primetime oriented cable show dedicated to showing people who are playing these esports games with pretty big cash prizes. Now, do you guys think that is like a quote-unquote natural direction for Warhammer and miniature gaming in general, but specifically Warhammer, to go towards? Like, when you think about the growth, what would be the best way to attract a much larger number of players, people, to this hobby, this industry? Does that seem to you like I don't know if the necessarily the kind of 2 different questions, the quote-unquote natural or most likely, and then the right direction. So maybe if you could tackle that from 2 points of view, what you think is most likely, or whether you think that's very likely, and then did you think that's a good idea in the first place?
I think it is certainly a cool idea to think of, that you could watch games of, Warhammer, kind of like what we do on Twitch, but even scaled up to the point where there's like prizes on the line and things like that. I feel like it's kind of inevitable, once Games Workshop proper, they didn't, once they got behind that and really started spearheading it, because you had lots of YouTubers and stuff doing battle reports, but nothing was ever like live, and done quite to the standard, I guess, that Games Workshop is currently doing it, where you have like Rob and Eddie and other guests coming in and kibitzing the games and stuff like that. That being said, I wonder, this is maybe a little bit of pessimist in me, that's like, we're seeing an aspect of the game come to life where people are just coming in to win, and they don't necessarily care about the hobby aspect or even the interaction of it with an opponent. They just want to come in to win. And if you move the game into an area that's going to reward that even more, such as putting them on television to some extent and putting cash prizes or other kind of large prizes behind that, it's just going to encourage that even more. And I'm not sure how you would get in front. You would get in front of it by requiring, your army has to look a certain way in order to even be on the stream. That's how it was at the LVO. Yeah. They had to dig around on the 40K side for quite a while till they found a couple armies they were willing to put on the stream.
Oh, interesting.
And so, as long as they held that standard, I guess. But then what do you do about independent events? What if another group was like, well, we're going to do the same thing. We'll put up videos as well, live streaming, because that technology is readily available. We'll put some prizes behind it, but we don't care if it's gray plastic on the table and a couple of guys that are arguing the whole time, as long as we get a winner. I think that would definitely put out a negative message to the existing community, and definitely to anybody who's interested in getting into it.
If you're going to have something that's going to go that big to be sanctioned and on some sort of distribution channel that's larger than, Warhammer Twitch, you're going to have a situation where Games Workshop is going to be sanctioning the events. They're going to be, I don't want to say patrolling, but they're going to be reasonably draconian about the standard of play and the standard of army. So I think that's almost self-correcting, because they won't allow a person who is a jackwagon to be on a big TV, a big rollout thing, nor will they allow an average painted army. It's going to be, I don't want to say it would be scripted, but I guarantee you it's not going to be, Joe Schlub and Jim Dumfer, playing that first game on big TV.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like the NFL. It's not like they let the players bring their homemade jerseys and stuff like that. It's all.
I mean, if you have the wrong color stripes on your cleats, you're out. I think they would have, if they go down that road to where we get prize support that's in the realm of actually making it worthy of TV. Because, again, TV's not going to cover this unless there's a stake in it and you can sell it to a subscriber. So it's one of those, they're going to control that from cradle to grave. GW would.
Well, and they would need to in order to keep that standard high.
God, yeah.
And if you put that out there and it was two people having fun or whatever with armies that looked great and all of that, is going to be way more enticing to new players and whatnot.
And I guess the more maybe practical or near-term question is whether you would like to see, or we think it would be okay to see, prizes, cash prizes at tournaments. And again, I don't know my history of Warhammer very well, unfortunately, so I don't know if we've had like Masters events and so on where there have been cash prizes. I would not be surprised if that were the case. But even if they were not incredibly large, I'm just curious your guys' views on the role of cash prizes in grand tournaments, as opposed to just like product.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so from the independent scene, there's been cash prizes for a while now. I know at Adepticon on the 40K side, there were some pretty massive prizes. There was like a cruise to Mexico that the first place got to win. And then there were cash prizes as well at the LVO. The guy who won the ITC on the 40K side got a check for like $2,500.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Like
I forgot about that.
So the independent scene has been, on the 40K side, has been putting out cash prizes for a few years now. So that's nothing new there. As far as Games Workshop goes, they've never put out cash prizes, but they have put out sanctioned events, tournaments that gave out product prizes, significant product prizes in the form of, in 7th edition. Yeah, 7th edition we had, I'm sorry, it was 8th. Early 8th, we had the Ard Boys tournament. You guys remember that? No, these guys don't remember that. So, used to have the Ard Boys tournament that Games Workshop put out, and there was a 40K version and a fantasy version, and they were meant to be much larger games. So for fantasy, they were 3,000 point games. Wow. For 40K, they were 2,500 point games. And, there was no painting requirement whatsoever, so your entire army could be bare plastic. And there was no sports. The only thing that mattered was winning your game at all costs. And so you played at a local tournament that your store or whatever would run. If you won that, then you went to a regional area and played in a Ard Boys tournament there. And ours was up in Denver. And then if you won that, you went to Chicago and you played in a nationals tournament. Now, if you won the nationals tournament, you got a 3,000 point army of your choice. Or a 2,500 point 40K army. So people would always joke like, well, if I won, I would get a 2,500 point Sisters of Battle army. Yeah. Because it's like thousands of dollars worth of product because it's all metal and hard to get. But, so that was Games Workshop's really kind of their only attempt at doing stuff like, I mean, I know they used to do the GTs and stuff like that, but as far as, and those would give away product prizes as well, but I don't think Games Workshop's ever given away cash. That's always been an independent thing and always on the 40K side.
And I think that's anathema to them, cash prizes. I from the way their company standpoint has always been in both sides, they've always looked down upon cash prizes. They don't mind shoveling tons of product out the door.
Right.
But I think and this is just my opinion, I don't know any truth to it, but I think they feel like cash incentivizes the wrong message for their community. That's just what I think. So take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, no, I suspect you might be right about that. James, what are your thoughts?
I'm not a fan of cash prizes in tournaments. I think product is kind of the way to go. I know there's this whole feeling of a community out there that wants to do this kind of stuff professionally, and well, you do it professionally by getting paid cash. But
Right.
I don't know if that's a rabbit hole we'd necessarily want to go down.
Because
I don't know, because I mean this game. From what I've seen, Games Workshop, the way they do it is it's all about having fun in this game, and however you have fun, they don't tell you how to have fun. But that's kind of like the main crux behind this, and I think a super super competitive event like that can bring out the worst in people, especially when there's money on the line. And I don't necessarily think that promotes that fun aspect of the hobby.
Yeah, the good handshake at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you're turning it into Monopoly. And nobody ever has fun playing Monopoly.
That's the truth.
Well, I mean that's interesting, especially coming from you, James, because from what I've gathered, listening to you guys on the show, is that you are a competitive player. You're very interested in facing hard lists. You're trying to bring a list that is capable of competing on the top tables. So you're oriented in that way, and that's your version of fun. And there are a lot of others who share that, but you're saying that you don't think like that version is one that goes too far or changes the fun equation.
Yeah, it changes the fun equation for me. I know, like you said, I like hard lists. I like going out there, trying to be top table and stuff like that. But it's still an interaction with your opponent, and I would not want to play someone that's just like super. Just the interaction with the person just does not go very well. I mean, because I'm there to have fun, and yeah, winning's fun, but not necessarily, to the extent of, your time with that person necessarily. I know in some games I've just been like, okay, if it's gonna be that kind of game, we'll just, we'll go through the motions.
Yeah.
I'll let you win. I don't, this game is not that important to me. It's just toy soldiers.
You just you'll just let them win, or?
Well, I mean, not necessarily want to win, but it's just like, kind of just like, okay, well,
See, I've played games against people that are like that, where they get real rules lawyery and want to pick apart every little move. And I get into a mode where it's like, okay, then I'll dial my aspect of that up to 11, and we'll play the most mechanical, unhuman game of Warhammer we can, and I'll make it just as unenjoyable for you as you're making it for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's just my personality.
No, yeah.
I kind of just like, okay, well, I'm, done here. This isn't necessarily fun. I mean, because I think there's a weird balance that you can be competitive, be there to win, and not be a dick about it necessarily.
And I kind of think you saw that in some of the commentary about LVO on some of the forums that were out there. And we tried to keep making the point that at LVO we had some really hard lists, some beat-faced players. But at no point did any one of those beat-faced players ever go stalking off or get mad or anything. They played like regular human. I had one of my best games against one of the better players in the tournament. Ben Moley took a beat-face, I'm here to win list, but he was also there to have a lot of fun and to joke and laugh and make it cool.
Yeah, there was nobody that like flipped out and yelled or stomped off or anything like that.
Yeah.
Everybody was having fun. And I was watching people get tabled in like 2 turns, and they were still having a good time.
Well, I mean, you look at Andrew's first game. He literally could have tabled that lady.
Oh yeah.
In turn 2. And instead, he dragged the game out and showed her how to play her army better.
Yeah.
He knew he was going to win. There wasn't a question of, I might lose this one. But it was more suitable and it was more fun to take her along and teach her some things that are going to help her as she goes through the tournament. So, and he ended up winning the tournament. So there's something to be said for not being that guy.
Yeah.
And I think cash and stuff just brings the worst aspects of
you wouldn't be
people
incentivized to do that with your opponent if they were like, this is only like my 3rd game of Age of Sigmar, and be like, okay, well,
okay, great,
sweet, I'm gonna bat this baby seal in the head
Yeah.
and move on towards that
Right.
cash.
Or maybe
Just
that's,
gonna-
maybe I just know where this rabbit hole goes just because observing the 40K people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
just they're nice guys. There's some cool guys. I always have fun playing with them. But even here at the local level where it's not that kind of thing, there's just a different vibe from them.
Especially
Mm.
when you play like a tournament.
A tournament,
As opposed
yes.
to like a Friday night where we're all hanging out.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, let's play a 3-round, 1-day event for like
Yeah.
$100 worth of prize support.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden.
And then
Yeah.
it gets really real, and it's just a totally. I always heard rumors about it when we were being a 7th and 8th edition fantasy players. Like, oh well, those 40K players they're whack and they're crazy and they're just competitive and all out to win, smash face. You hear all that stuff, and then you actually delve into it, and you're like, yeah, this is kind of the way it is.
Yeah.
Mm.
This is I still have fun at our local tournaments and stuff like that. A lot of them don't get that way, but there's definitely a different vibe, and there's definitely players on there that's like, okay, this is toy soldiers.
Yeah.
Let's have some fun here.
So does that answer that?
Yeah. So kind of leading into the next part of this, getting more into the organized play, but maybe to try to start out, focus it a little bit more. Okay, we have the Age of Sigmar UK Grand Tournament that's come back this year, and it has 3 heats, and it's going to have a finale in October. And we've already gone through 1 heat, and the next one's coming up next month in April. And the pack is online. It's primarily a straightforward hard scores oriented pack. I think it has, of course, major, minor, draw, and then minor loss, major loss. And it does have, I think it has 1 primary soft score element, which is what they call, I believe, the best army nomination. So if you either win or if you're at least nominated for best army, which of course would include painting, and I'm not sure what other factors are going to be included in that, you get the equivalent of a draw added to your score. And that's the only soft score specific element that I could find in the pack. So if you guys were thinking about, like you are, what's the fellow's name who organized the LVO event, John?
John.
John Bracken, yeah.
Yeah, so if you guys are John, and you're tasked by GW to create the foundation's initial conditions for a U.S. Age of Sigmar Grand Tournament structure, with heats or qualifiers, it could come in a few different forms. Surely you could have a form where you're leveraging Las Vegas Open, Adepticon, and so on as qualifiers. Like maybe a 1-day or 2-day to incorporate it into what's already going on there, but not to overtake it. Kind of sit side by side with it, or you just kind of do a more dedicated heats like they're doing. However you do it, how would you guys go about designing that from your point of view? What do you think would be the best structure? To what degree would it be just focused on hard scores? Would it have soft scores? If so, what soft scores? How would you think about? Yeah, let's start there. Then I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, like list building and different power levels and prizes and all those things. But let's start with hard scores and soft scores.
Yeah, you gotta have soft scores. I mean, I understand for the Heat and for the big, All England GT that they don't emphasize that, but I think that's because they emphasize it at every other thing that they run, and this is their version of in your face, beat face, just come here to win. And I mean, I think they made that pretty clear at the beginning. That Heat 1, 2, and 3 and the big GT are, winner take all. They were really clear about that, but virtually every other event they run has a soft score component.
And of course, you and I forgot to mention that you do have to have your models painted, and they have to be Games Workshop models, so they do have some other equivalent soft score type elements built into it. The
basic company type rules, but boy, if you were going to build something in the U.S. or even for worldwide competition, we covered this in our last show. It's if you don't require soft scores, you might as well just throw it out back to the community and say, we're just actually here to take your scores and we're not actually running the event, because then it's going to be player driven and you don't want that.
I'm not sure I don't necessarily follow that, Bill. Could you say it in a different way? I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, if you take out soft scores, if you just say it's win, loss, draw for all the marbles, you're basically saying then go ahead and bring your gray plastic, go ahead and do whatever you want, and that's it. It's all over, and we become 40K.
Well, yeah. Although, like I said, definitely with their official events, they do require all the models are painted. But I do see what you're saying. If you don't have at least like a best army or best painted, or maybe like they do not have a sportsmanship. Hopefully, I'm right about that with the pack. I'm pretty sure that's the case. I don't think there's an explicit sportsmanship component built into the pack. There might be, and it's just not mentioned in the pack. But yeah, I think I see what you're saying now.
Yeah, it's if you listen to what the Heel and Hammer guys talked about Sheffield Slaughter, they were almost on the verge of depressed about the bad hobby that was on display at Sheffield Slaughter, only because the pack actually said 3-color minimum rather than defining some kind of standard. So if you don't define a standard, if you don't define a soft score or at least a minimum standard, you might as well just turn it over to the players and say, here, guys, do what you want.
Yeah, real quickly on that. I mean, I think even Dan Wayne and company would say that is the exception. That's the exception rather than what has been the rule in the scene, especially in the UK. But it might be more to your point as well, because as I understand, most of the tournaments have had probably a higher standard of requirement built into their pack, and so it has incentivized or just mandated more effort going into painting and quote unquote the hobby side. So, but yeah, not to give the wrong impression. Like I think they would say like that's definitely more the exception than what they've seen as the rule so far.
Well, I think one of the big things is the difference between saying a 3-color minimum and then having like a painting rubric and saying that there's like 20 points available. You can score 25, but you max at 20 or something like that. And then you break it down on how those points are earned. Because even the more competitive people that don't enjoy painting or whatever, they're still going to see those as points to be had.
Absolutely.
Especially if I show up, sure, I guess I could show up with gray plastic, but I'll get 0 for paint, and then it won't matter if I win all my games because of the way the scoring is set up. I can't get on that podium. So I'm going to follow this painting rubric and get, even if I just follow it at a basic level to get up to like 15 points or something, so that I don't have to spend hours on individual guys highlighting and wet blending. You're still going to bring a decent looking army that's not spray painted one color, spray painted another color, and then the beaks are dipped or something like that. You'll get a higher quality army overall that even the more competitive people will go after. And really that's just an issue of the pack of saying, because I know we all say 3-color minimum, right? And that I don't think that's a good standard anymore to use.
Tabletop.
But even that is kind of an ambiguous term, right? What is your tabletop standard? My tabletop standard. Maybe I'm a total paint snob that feels like unless you have blending and highlighting and all your stuff is based, like that's a big one, is basing. A lot of people don't even consider basing part of tabletop. They focus only on the model, and so they show up with like these black bases with a little bit of paint splatters on them from when they were painting the model, and they're like, well, my stuff is done. It's like, not to my standard, it's not. So if you have that painting rubric where there's checkpoints all the way down to generate your points and everything, then I think that's probably the best way to handle that. And then if you wanted to do like a best overall painting or anything like that, it's probably the best way to do that is have the event organizers or some neutral third party come in and score that and give awards accordingly. But to touch back
to your point on the painting, kind of broken down painting scores, experience at Adepticon really speaks to that. I mean, I did not hear a single person complain. I mean, maybe there was someone there, and there have been people over the years complain about Adepticon's painting score orientation, but for my money, I thought it was pretty fantastic. And you're exactly right; it worked as you laid out. You had highly competitive players who were there who had really nice armies because they wanted to get all of the points that they could on the painting side.
And that's what any real competitive player is going to. That's why James paints his stuff to the level he does. He wants all those points.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's why I know we're calling it soft scores and stuff like that. I think our friend Ryan had a good thing, and just don't make the distinction between hard scores and soft scores, and just say this is your score. Yeah. And the actual really competitive players, that's part of your score. I mean, like I said, when I go to a tournament, I read every pack. I try to squeeze every point I can out of it because I'm there to win. And if painting and sports are part of it, you're going to adapt your play style or your painting or whatever you need to do to maximize that. I mean, I went into that with, I read the pack for LVO. Sports was you had to have one favorite opponent vote to win the thing. And I took that in mind, trying to, not, I don't want to say like game the system or anything, but I went in with that in mind with, I need to get a favorite opponent vote here to win.
Yeah, you still owe me that $20 too.
Yeah, really.
So, I mean, I think we just need to necessarily get rid of the distinction, and that's just part of your score, and you expect it. And that's the thing, people will, if it's expected, people will, especially if they're there to win, it's just going to become part of their thinking. You're going to hardwire people that way, that painting sports is part of it. I need to do it. And I think
they'll adapt accordingly.
Yeah. And there might be some kicking and screaming along the way, but
you'll always have that.
Yeah, you'll always have that, but I think the vast majority will go that way.
I think one pushback. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I think, Elric, you brought it up in our last show, was you talked about the best general is the guy who's the most flexible.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're looking for the top player is the guy that goes to the tournament prepared for that tournament, which means painted and is ready to play good games and all that stuff. You're absolutely right. We need to get rid of that distinction between hard and soft scores and just this is your score for the tournament. Deal with it. Sorry, Tyler.
Yeah, so we should definitely talk more about the sportsmanship side. I think there's maybe more challenges with that one and variants of views. But on the painting, so one pushback that I've heard is it might limit the number of folks who could come out to play at a tournament. So I've heard this argument with War Machine that War Machine tournaments can sometimes be more attractive and open to new players and whatnot because you can show up with gray plastic or 3 minimum standard. You don't have to put a ton of effort into it. So it's definitely a different mindset, and I have no idea to what degree that's true, but certainly I've heard that view on many occasions. I'm just kind of curious how you guys think about trying to balance sort of, the hobby and certain values in relation to that, painting, etc., what we've been calling soft scores, but I like the point about not necessarily making a distinction. And then, this argument of attraction and whether you're missing out on getting a lot of new people into tournaments, into the hobby, by requiring certain painting standards.
One thing I found a lot with entry-level War Machine players, they're only entry-level for a couple of weeks. And either they get completely grabbed by the game and they jump into the scene 100%, or they never go back again.
Never come back.
Because there's that, the whole, I don't have to paint this stuff, I just build it. I'm the little baby seal. I go to a game, and very few people, with the exception of the press gangers, and our local press ganger here is really good about this. When he gets somebody new, he babies them along, and he's really good at it. But you run into some of the other guys, and they just beat their faces in until they bleed, and they never go back to that game again. And they hate it.
I've never seen a group of people salivate so much at the idea of playing a newbie and just scoring an easy win as with War Machine players. So I used to play it quite a bit back in Mark 1 when it first came out. And, one of the big distinctions between Warhammer and Games Workshop and War Machine and Privateer Press is Privateer Press is unabashed about how their approach to the game is. They right on the front page it says play with your balls out. They mean play as hard as you can. They don't care about any of that other stuff. Just win. So I think that out of the gate is trying to appeal to other a different group of gamers altogether. But as far as drawing people in and stuff, I promise you that if you put a table out that had 2-dimensional terrain and a bunch of unpainted stuff, and then there's 2 guys playing on a table next to them that have a bunch of nicely painted terrain, and they have nicely painted armies and everything, I guarantee you that latter table is going to draw way more attention from people who either are playing other types of games and are kind of interested in what tabletop is, all the way to people who have no idea what any of this is, and they just came in to grab a coffee, and now all of a sudden they're hooked visually because it looks so good. And this is a big part of, kind of touched way back on one of your original questions, a thing that a community can do to bring people in is you could set up paint nights and stuff like that and help people get to that standard of, you're not going to paint, somebody who joins our group to tomorrow is not going to paint to James's standard by the end of the week, but he can sit down and we can give him tips and give him motivation. Mostly is the biggest thing, to see progress. And before you know it, they'll have a painted army, and it's not as big of a problem. And that's something that the community themselves can do to help bring new people in.
And by the same token, couldn't you have a night where you played soft games, take a new player and, actually maybe even had a 2-player game, but one experienced person played with that new guy and showed him how you deploy, how you move.
Well, that's the kind of stuff that we do in our group.
That's the thing we do. Because I know I played 2 new people the last 2 weeks, and I know with our game, my last game with Cody, I was like, a game went really long, and we only got to turn 3, but that's because we spent. I went through the phases, explaining every option he had, the pros and cons of, who, because he finished deploying first. So he's like, well, what's the pros of going first? What's the pros of going second? How do I do this? So, you could do that. Like I said,
both those guys, Cody and Robert, are both experienced tabletop gamers.
Yeah.
As far as somebody like completely fresh coming into the game, you'd have to take a slightly different approach.
Yeah. Kind of back to that question where Tyler was saying, I know we're kind of talking about how we want to get the broadest appeal, reach the most people. But I think the question, I think Games Workshop has answered this question before, is at what point does your mass appeal versus your core audience? How much of that do you want? Where do you want to draw that line between?
Absolutely.
Do I want to bring in? Do I want to maximize profits and try to get every single person I can playing this game versus where do I want, my core audience? Where do I want those hobby people? How do I want, these people here to have fun playing? There's a balance in there, and they kind of, as a company, to decide where they want to draw that line. I think they've clearly drawn it in the past before. They've been airing on that, we want a small dedicated fan base that's going to support us. That's kind of where they've been in the past. They're, maybe moving a little bit more with, some of this Twitch stuff and other stuff like that towards that, that broader appeal.
Yeah.
So it's just that weird.
That might be why you don't see Silver Tower and Blood Bowl and stuff like that.
Well, I think about like comics that have exploded or you can name many different examples for a short period of time. They've exploded, and then their lives get ruined for a little while because they have people paying attention to them who have like no sense of connecting with, where they're coming from, their identity or their sense of humor or whatnot. And it's like their life gets a hell of a lot worse. And then their audience dwindles back to kind of a more appropriate, equilibrium or size. And so I think that's a great point.
I think a great example is like the comic book movies. Obviously they're trying to appeal to the biggest audience they can, but they also want to appease the comic book fans,
the core group that knows the story.
And I think Marvel especially has done a pretty good job of doing both of that. But you do kind of have to draw a line and say, we have to hold true to the original intent of what we were doing since day one and appeal to that group. Yeah, I think that's what Games Workshop is also doing.
So let's talk about sportsmanship. This came up as well in a saucy, super awesome Wargamers Club version of Heel and Hammer. Did you guys listen to that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was a fun discussion. Okay. All right. So just a recap for everybody else. They had different views on it. For example, Dan Heelan was saying, when it comes to sportsmanship scores, he's certainly not a big fan of doing it. He'll tend to just kind of give the maximum. I think he said maybe only a few occasions in this entire history of playing war games. He's been playing for I don't know how long, a very long time. He has not done that. And it's more on just a kind of first principle that he does that. He's not a big fan of it. He thinks that a lot of experienced wargamers who go to a lot of tournaments are not a big fan of it. I think part of his view on that is it can add a little too much randomness, that he thinks it's more appropriate. It's not that appropriate for the players to be judging that, because like for a player to be judging someone else's army is inappropriate because that army is legal by the standards of that tournament pack. If you have a problem with that army, it's up to the TO or TOs to do something about it within the pack, not the players themselves to comp it. So, I mean, there's a lot of other views that were expressed, but I'm curious, what's your guys' take on the role of sportsmanship scores at grand tournaments?
So I think there's some, I don't know, I think there's some kind of confusion there between, there's different ways people view sportsmanship scores. Some people view sportsmanship scores as the person they're playing. And this pack, sportsmanship was kind of like the list that the guy was playing.
Which is, I think, always probably a bad idea.
I think that's always a bad idea. So I think that's where Heelan's aversion to that kind of system is don't judge my list. I think they had a good point. It's legal under the comp system, whether that's no comp or if we're playing with comp or whatever. I'm here to do my best to play the best I can, so why would I not take the best tools? So I think that kind of sportsmanship necessarily isn't necessary. Maybe just giving sportsmanship on the player and whatever form. I mean, it's always been. I don't think that's why there's a clear answer right now. This has always been a very contentious issue between people. I mean, some people see it one way, some people see it another way. Personally, it's for me, it's just, I prefer not to grade the person's army list or what they're playing. Grade the guy. I mean, do we have to get along? Do we have to joke and all that other stuff? They're at the table? No. But as long as, we're not, calling a rules judge every 2 seconds over to, because we're having a fight over millimeters and stuff like that. I mean, usually I can get along with most of my opponents. And I think that's kind of what I'm just looking for is like, wasn't it a semi, enjoyable game? Would I mind playing this person again? Or do I really want to, just gouge out my eyes and ears every single time it's like, oh, why am I even going to play this person? I'm just going to, you can have a win or whatever. I don't care. I don't want to play you again. I think sports should be part of it. I don't know if there's a good way to do it.
I do agree with definitely your point that, and I think I would imagine it's fair to say that most tournaments, when it comes to a sportsmanship score, it is more about, did this player behave well at the table? Did they play a quote unquote fair game? Were they generally fun to play against? Or were they did they try to cheat? Those kind of, and that's obviously incredibly rare. And Dan made that point in the discussion. He wasn't even sure if that ever has really happened to that extreme. So yeah, kind of more talking about that. So with that in mind, Elric, Bill, do you guys like that idea of having like a scale of 1 to 5? Each game you play, you rate your opponent based on that in-game experience with them, and then that has an effect on the overall scores.
What's stopping you from giving everybody a 5, though?
That's one of the main arguments against it. Yeah, is that some people just take that mindset of, well, I'm going to give my buddy, or like different variances. So I've even heard tournaments where a group will come in and give all the buddies 5s or whatnot, or some players, like Dan said he was one of them, he just gives 5s across the board as long as there wasn't anything ridiculous happening. But then other people, they don't do that. They actually go in and they think about it. And so that can cause some variance in what you actually see in the final scores.
What about instead of a rating 1 to 5, what about a yes or no? I know, because the one tournament I did was like, was the guy there on time? Yes or no? Did he have all the stuff he needed to play the game? Yes or no? Were rules disputes resolved amicably? Yes or no?
Well, you'd still have people that are in them.
Well, I mean, and if they mark no, then that's when you have a conversation with the TO when they find out why did you mark.
But some
no?
people are so non-confrontational that they'll mark.
Well,
yes,
I mean,
I
don't think you can avoid that, but I think.
Well, one of the other things that I've heard is like if you have 5 games and you have a rating of 1 through 5, you give one person gets 5, your best game, and then 4, 3, 2, 1. The problem with that is is the guy that you give a 1 to, it implies that he was your worst game. And what if you had 5 really good games you didn't play against anybody that really deserved a 1?
Has to do a 1.
Well, I was talking about before we started recording today is what if you had a pool of points to give away during a tournament? Let's say you had a 5-game tournament. So you had a pool of 11 points to give, and the sports is going to be rated on a 1 to 3. So your average guy, you're going to give a 2 to, and you're going to give one person a 3 to. That's going to be your best game vote. I mean, I think something like that could work. I don't know if it would, but if you allow everyone to vote 100% for somebody, or you did something where you have to rank them 1 through 5, again, you can build some really weird stuff into that. I don't know how you fix it. Even with a pool system like I'm talking about, you could still, hold on to your 3 points for the guy you know and like.
Sure.
Or, I mean, it's always going to be subjective. There's no perfect system. But if you do away with it completely...
Well, see, this is the ammo that those people use, is because it's so subjective and there's no way to set up like a cut dry way to assign sports, and it's easy to manipulate and stuff. So why not just throw it all out? It's like, well, because I don't want to incentivize playing against dicks all the time.
And that's the whole thing is if you have no system, then you have no standard.
What about LVOs? Because I was thinking about it. I thought about it, and I thought, just getting one favorite opponent vote might be the answer.
No, I don't
I
think.
think the strong argument against that is that it introduces, it seems to me personally, an unavoidable element of randomness or greater element of randomness. I don't actually, I don't know if that's truly the case. We'd have to look at a good data set to get a sense of that. We're looking at one tournament right now, but at least on paper, it seems to introduce a whole new element of randomness.
Well, the problem, I guess, with that is that, what if you did win? What if Andrew did win all his 6 games, but he didn't get a best opponent vote? And it's not because he was being an asshole or anything. It's just because you have 6 chances.
Yeah, I guess.
To do it, and you play against 6 people that just aren't vibing with you, or
they each had one better game.
Yeah, so that I get it. And it's nice. The LVO system was really nice in its simplicity of determining it, but I don't know.
Maybe a different way of asking this is: do you guys think that specific system with requiring you to have a best opponent vote in order to be eligible to win, was it just eligible to win or to be among the top 3 and/or the top 3?
The top 3. In order to be on the podium, you had to have a best opponent vote.
Okay. So do you guys think that, setting aside whether it's a good, whether you would do it again, what do you think it had a meaningful impact on incentivizing, favorable choices, let's say, or better collective choices in terms of folks coming to that event to create a better overall experience? Do you think it had a meaningful impact?
Yeah, because I think you're always, anytime you have a big event like that, you're always going to have different groups of people. You'll have the people that are just there to play, because it's a great excuse to get in a bunch of games over a few days and hang out with buddies. There's, and then you'll have those people that are like, no, I came here to win it. Right. And when you say, well, you have to have one best opponent vote to win it, it does mean that those people that are coming to smash face, in air quotes or whatever, they still have to play to a certain sportsmanship standard in order to attempt to get that best opponent. So actually, maybe the LVO system is, in its simplicity, a pretty solid way of doing it. Obviously, you'll still have that randomness and there's small issues. There's probably no perfect way of doing it, but by letting you know up front, you have to get that best opponent vote, and your whole goal is to still win. James, you went to win.
I went to win.
And you read that in the pack.
And I was,
it was always a part of your game.
It was always a part of my game. Building that within mind. I was worried at one point with Sylvaneth, is laying down 15 force gonna make my opponent angry and not win me that vote.
Yeah, I know for Andrew too, it was one of his big game plans and concerns was, hey, I I got to create a fun game and everything for my opponent. And I got to make sure, because his list, despite what the internet may think or whatever, was, it's a tough list, man. A Stormcast army that turtled as hard as his did, but still had the aggressive punch. I played against it a couple times, and I felt like I was punching a steel wall. Like I just couldn't get through it, and that can be pretty frustrating. So, he had to go into it knowing that and still make a fun, interactive game for all 6 of his opponents because he wanted to win as well.
My question now is, did the system then not work perfectly? Because it instilled that fear in every player, that every person that wanted to go and win, they all knew going in that they had to be a certain way. Didn't the system then work? Did we not eliminate the jerks?
Yeah, that's what Alec was saying.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
that.
I mean, that's, I almost think that if we start assigning points, if you have X amount of best opponent votes, you get a minor win. If you have this many, you get a major win. If we start doing that, then we incentivize kind of almost a pretense sort of attitude. Whereas if we go like LVO does and just say you need a best opponent vote to place in the top to get a prize, does the system work perfectly?
Well, I wouldn't say perfectly because just to play devil's advocate for a moment, if I won all 6 of my games or 5, went 5-1, and I didn't get a podium because I didn't get a best opponent vote, and I felt like I really did my best to have a good time and felt like I was vibing with my opponents and was having a good time or whatever and giving my opponents good games despite winning them, but still didn't get that, I would feel pretty upset and would feel like I, in maybe some ways, got cheated of a podium that I earned by playing the game to the best of my ability and I lost to a subjective aspect of it because maybe some of the other people bought my opponent's beers in their other games or what so there's always that kind of aspect to it as well or maybe I just brought a really heinous list that people just that it comes back to that you don't like my list or not necessarily me issue. So it's so hard to. System. I would say the LVO approach is probably one of the best. That's probably why John went with it. I mean, he's got tons of experience, probably more so than just about anybody else out there running events with sportsmanship incorporated into it. And maybe that's why he got to that point of simplicity of just just get that one vote and then go from there.
Yeah, because you can game the system no matter what you use. You can game it. Yeah, some guy from Club X might have gone to LVO, and he made sure to bring another guy from Club X so that he could get a favorite opponent vote.
Yeah, but they still have to play against each other out of a field of 80-some people.
You do, but you look at the one guy that got 5 out of 6. I guarantee you he didn't play all 5 games against club mates. Yeah. So obviously he was doing something right, So
yeah, you mentioned that one player might have bought the other player a couple beers, and I've heard that argument from a few folks over the past few months as well. And I can see the point, but I don't know, at the same time, like you're incentivizing pro-social behavior, like positive behavior, maybe for slightly the wrong reasons, but it's still generally a good thing. Like people are incentivized to be nice to each other.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I got my best opponent vote was I bought Jules a bunch of beers.
Hey, he's only 11, damn it. Well, I was handing out dice like they were candy. I mean, to people I played and to people that the wife played. I wasn't doing it for votes, trying to advertise the podcast a little bit. But, some people looked at that and said, oh, so you want my vote? I'm like, no, you're going to decide that later. But,
So this discussion also came up with David Griffin and Kel Thompson. So they're in the early stages of putting together an Age of Sigmar event for NashCon this year in June. I think June 10th, maybe June 11th, somewhere around there. Nashcon.org. I don't think it's up quite yet. So David's working on the pack. And he was asking me for some thoughts on the sportsmanship score. We had been talking about the LVO system. And he was also a little concerned about the potential for randomness of it, exactly that scenario you laid out, Elric. And so he had put together, I'm curious you guys' thoughts on this, kind of preliminary adjustment on the LVO, which is, okay, we're still scoring, so rating on sportsmanship. obviously he has a qualifier. It's very subjective, etc., kind of trying to provide context. There would be a 1 to 5 scale for each game. And in order so the player with the highest score after 5 games will win the best sports. Now, in order to win best overall, a player has to have scored at least 20 sportsmanship points out of a possible 25. So that was his thought about maybe a way to try to get the spirit of the LVO. You need a favorite opponent vote in order to podium, but without having as much randomness. I don't know. I haven't thought enough about it to know whether this would be a better system. What do you guys think? So essentially, you got to get at least a 4 in each of your 5 games to have a shot at best overall.
No.
No?
The math just doesn't work. Because if I'm on a 1 to 5 scale and I'm pretty average against each one of my opponents, I can't win. So if I'm not a jerk but not the best guy in the world buying beers, I have no hope of winning.
So 5. So the idea that he had is that you're playing 5 games, and you should at least be getting 4 points out of 5 for each game. I think that's kind of his premise. Someone is only going to give you unless you run into a real jerk or you've done something to really warrant a score lower than 4. If you've been a good opponent, had a good game, even if you brought a good list, we're at a competitive tournament. The list, as long as it's legal, you should be getting at least a 4 out of 5. I guess it gets still open up that possibility that you get someone who plays your whatever, your BCR kind of ruck list and decides that you should not be playing that list at this tournament regardless, and they give you a 2. Yeah. It still does introduce that potential.
And one game takes you out of the potential. And in a scale like that where everybody's a 4 going into it, why have a system? Why not just have a checkbox that says good game?
So what I would do, because I like where his head's at with the whole thing, but I would incorporate how James was talking about the yes or no.
Yeah.
And if you did like 5 questions and every yes you got was a point,
there you go.
I would do that. And then to really get rid of any list subjectivity, you just don't have a question on there like, did you enjoy playing your opponent's list? Because, that could totally mean that. Because really sport should be about your opponent, not their army.
Totally.
So if it was 5 questions like, did your opponent show up to time? Did they have all their stuff with them? Did they know their rules? Were there any rules disputes, etc.? And then maybe throw in one other question, I don't know off the top of my head, but 5 questions like that, yes or no.
And the last question would be, did you enjoy playing this guy? That way, if they were there and they provided a good game, they would get their automatic 4 per game.
Yeah, I think that would be the best way to do it.
And the last question is the deal breaker. Did you have fun playing this guy?
Yeah, and but word it in such a way that it's meant to be, did you enjoy your opponent, not your opponent's army?
Yeah, you'd have to put in the disclaimer, not his list, not what he brought.
Well, you could even do that, but still, like he was saying, with the averaging of 4 points per game, or even if you didn't get any of those check boxes on any of the other games, on all 5 games, you still have the 20 points.
The 20 points. Even if you brought a dirty list, nobody enjoyed playing.
And no one played it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You'd still get the 20 points.
So Sylvaneth players would still have a chance to.
I knew there'd be a Sylvaneth rant in here somewhere.
Okay. We have seriously got to talk about this. I know at this point it's a running joke. But, we don't have to necessarily do it now, but before we leave today, we're going to have to set the record straight about Sylvaneth.
Oh, man. All right.
You know what? I think it's a really good time to take a segment break here. So on that little comical note, I think we're going to bring this segment of the Realm of Lore to an end. If you want to hear the rest of the discussion with Tyler and the rest of us, you're going to have to listen to the Scruby and Wells podcast. And Tyler will let you know when part 2 is going to drop.
Yeah, absolutely. So it should be the week following when this podcast is out.
That'll be good timing. So we really want to thank you for coming on with us, Tyler. Really appreciate it. You raised the IQ in the room by quite a bit. So,
there's only one way to go from the bottom. So.
Well, thanks, you guys. It's always a lot of fun. I really love talking with you. We always seem to go far too long. We're gonna have to figure out how to do an actual 1 hour podcast. See if we're capable of doing that.
Yeah, right.
Not gonna happen.
Probably not.
4 guys talking about Age of Sigmar. Yeah, that's gonna go short.
Not gonna happen.
We kind of already planned it.
Yeah.
We were gonna go long.
Yeah. So anyway, Tyler, can you give us all your contact info?
Yeah, so I'm at Twitter, Scruby and Wells, SCRUBY. Send me hate mail at tyleremerson@gmail.com.
Why would anybody send you hate mail here?
And just for
No, I'm
anybody
just
that's not aware of Tyler's podcast, please grab it and listen to it. I'd say the last 4 or 5 episodes you've dropped have just been out of the park. Good
Absolutely.
stuff.
Oh, thanks, man.
Going from strength to strength.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited to, like I said, going to do this series of discussions on organized play and just try to, have a lot of open conversations with a lot of different folks in the community and see where it leads.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. Lots of opinions.
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll call it there. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll talk to you later.
All right. Cheers, guys.
See ya.
If you would like to get a hold of us, you can reach us at our email address, which is rollingbadpodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit our website at rollingbad.com. We have a Twitter account for the podcast, which is at rolling_bad. We also have a Facebook page. You can just search for Rolling Bad on Facebook. We each have an individual Twitter account. You can reach me at Elric Edge.
You can get me at Bill Castello, Castello.
And I'm at Tersoth.
You can also see our work, mostly James, at our Instagram page, Rolling Bad, all one word. DJ, mix up a fat beat for me.
This is Tyler's show. Back
Oh,
off.
man.
And then I'll try to keep us moving, and then we'll get into that other topic.
Okay.
Okay. And then we can talk about why Sylvaneth are terrible at the end.
Yeah, that'd be good as part of that. That's funny.